My name is Marc Brackett, and I am the director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and a professor in Yale's Child Study Center. I thought I would talk about my new book, Permission to Feel, today. And it's funny because people have been questioning me, like, why a book called Permission to Feel and not a book on emotional intelligence? And I just want to share a little bit of a story. So in 1990, two psychologists, Peter Salovey and Jack Mayer, wrote a theory called emotional intelligence. And most people didn't read that theory because it was published in an obscure journal. But in 1995, Daniel Goleman wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. Little did we know it would become the #1 best-selling pop psychology book ever written. Also in the same year, the field of social and emotional learning was formed. For example, the organization CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic Social and Emotional Learning, got created. And so when you think about it, for the last 30 years in the academic literature, the last 25 years, in the popular media and in education, these principles of social and emotional learning and emotional intelligence have been around. As a matter of fact, almost 90% of teachers believe that social emotional learning is important. Companies around the world are adopting programs on emotional intelligence. But then I have a question. And my question is, why is it that anxiety disorders are so prevalent these days? Why is it that depression is now the leading cause of disability worldwide? Why is it that bullying is still really prevalent in our nation's schools? About a third of all kids will be bullied this year in schools. Why is it that the suicide rates have gone up 28% over the last 20 years or so? And I think it's because we have not gotten deeper. We have not gotten to the place where we are giving people the permission to feel. I was blessed in life that I had an uncle. His name was Marvin, and he was the only adult in my childhood who really listened to me. I had some childhood trauma. I was bullied as a kid. I hated school. But there was one adult, Uncle Marvin, who just listened, and he was non-judgmental. And I realized, my later years, that maybe he was an emotion scientist, as opposed to everyone else in my life who were emotion judges. And I realized that the emotion scientist is open and curious. The emotion judge is the knower. The emotion scientist is someone who investigates how people feel and gets granular about emotions. And the emotion judge is someone who basically attributes emotions to people. And that's where Ruler, our evidence-based approach to social and emotional learning, was born. Actually, Uncle Marvin led this work back in the 1960s and 70s in his school. And it was only when I got to work with Peter Salovey and Jack Mayer that we were to put this together and really create a framework that we call Ruler, which are the 5 skills of emotional intelligence: recognizing emotions, understanding emotions, labeling them with the precise words, knowing how and when to express emotions, and then how to regulate emotions. And I think what's unique about this work on emotional intelligence is that in all other subject areas like geometry and science, there's generally a criterion of correctness. What I mean by that is that 5 + 5 = 10, 8 - 2 = 6. The Pythagorean theorem is the Pythagorean theorem. But when it comes to our emotional life, things are a bit more complicated. What do I mean by that? Well, the strategies that I use to help me manage my anxiety or fear might be different than the ones that work for you. And what's happened in our world is that we have really adopted quick fixes, meaning mindfulness has become like really the big thing now. So everybody's doing mindfulness exercises and breathing. Or it's yoga. Everybody's doing yoga. And I think those are both great things, and I do them both. But the truth is, when it comes to dealing with our inner lives and our emotions, it's much more complex. We need a wide range of strategies to help us manage our emotions. So for example, here at Yale, what I find is the students say they're stressed, but they're actually feeling envious. And so when you think about how do you help a student manage envy versus stress, it's a bit different. In my own life, I used to label myself as being stressed all the time. Then I realized that, stressed is having too many demands and not enough resources. Well, I'm not stressed. Then I would say, maybe I'm anxious. Well, not really anxious, because anxiety is about uncertainty. I have pretty good security here. Oh no, I'm not anxious either. Am I fearful? No, there's no danger. And then it wasn't until about 6 years ago that I realized I was just chronically overwhelmed. All right, so what's the strategy to deal with being overwhelmed? Well, the only strategy that really will work is to take things off your plate. So myself, along with many other psychologists, say you have to name it to tame it. And I think that's the core of this work, is being highly perceptive of our own and other people's emotions, really getting to understand where our feelings are coming from, learning and building a very precise and sophisticated vocabulary to explain and understand the full range of emotions, being comfortable expressing those feelings. And I realize that there are rules that we've created in society, there are rules that are in families, there are rules in classrooms and everywhere, right, about do we have the permission to express our feelings? And people have mindsets around it that, well, people tell me all the time, well, you're so vulnerable. You share about your childhood abuse and your bullying and your anxious and mother and your angry father. My brother even once said, people are going to think you're weak. And I remember thinking to myself, well, maybe that's your projection, right? I'm doing okay. And I say that because I believe it's a human right to give children the permission to feel all emotions, which they're going to do, but also to have the ability to express those feelings. And then finally, that last skill of emotion regulation, which is, I believe, the skill that's going to take our entire life to master, if we even ever master it. Because again, there's no criterion of correctness. It's about exploring the strategies that work best for you for the full range of emotions, and then using those strategies wisely to achieve your goals in life. So let me just end by saying a few things. One, I think the first step in our work is giving ourselves and the people we love the permission to feel. The permission to experience and express the full range of emotions. The second is that we should all try to become emotion scientists and not emotion judges. Right? Be open to emotions, not closed. Have a growth mindset about learning and developing the strategies as opposed to a fixed mindset. I think the third is to recognize that emotional intelligence is a real intelligence, a real set of skills. We often classify it as soft skills. Well, these are really hard skills. The fourth piece, especially in our work in schools, is that we have to move away from piecemeal kind of flavors of the month or assemblies or workshops, and we really have to think systemically. Because it's never just about the individual, it's about the community. And finally, what I'd like to say is that our center, I am personally, vested in creating what we call an emotion revolution, because what we know is that emotions have the power, right, to either enhance our lives or hinder, our success in life. And our center's mission is to use the power of emotions to help create a healthier, more equitable, innovative, and compassionate world. And I hope you'll join the bus.